Okay, so first I want to talk about a little bit about Project Read. I looked up that digital AI tutor tool, and a few things I liked about it. I like that it followed certain steps when a student is is decoding a word. I like that it first the child would say it, and then it would go into the Ekron boxes. And then the child could say the sounds. Um, but eventually, if the child did not get the word, it would assist them with the word. Um, also, I like that they are working to make it where the AI tutor can have certain books for certain students. They're working toward that right now. I thought it was very interactive. I tried to set up an account, but they were doing it was under maintenance at this point, so I wasn't able to set up an account. But I look forward to that. I did look. I was curious to see if this had been approved by the county I work in, and it hasn't been approved yet. But I could see this or something very similar coming um, into my county um, within the next few years. So I'm going to talk through the articles that we read for this module. Um, the first one I read was using new literacies to foster student motivation. And a few parts that stuck out to me um, were the benefits to new literacies. They suggest teaching strategies um, are to provide students with a chance um, I'm sorry, well, the new literacies can give students a chance to have more choice, develop student confidence, problem solve, and scaffold reading. Teachers become collaborators and learn how to keep their students engaged and take ownership of their learning. I feel like that providing students any sort of choice um, with what they're learning about and how they want to present their learning will increase their motivation and confidence to read or write. Write I did quotation marks because sometimes a student might want to, instead of a written paper, want to do like a PowerPoint or some other form, a blog, some other form of digital literacy. Um, let's see. Another thing that stood out to me was uh, Scallion 2016 discusses responsive instruction with whole groups, small groups, and one on one instructions, and that teachers need to know their students' literacy skills to plan for instruction. I agree with that. Teachers will need to have lessons and reading instruction success. Um, and the only way for that to happen is to know their students' strengths and weaknesses. When the teacher knows, she can offer support so children don't become discouraged. Another thing they talked about was student awareness. Uh, Bronzo and Afterblock 2011. When students value reading, they become lifelong learners. These students have intrinsic motivation through um, knowing they are competent and fluent in reading. It leads to their ability to understand more complex comprehension. When the students believe that they are a strong reader, they become a strong reader. Um, this gets back to the teacher knowledge and knowing students' current literacy skills and how to increase students' knowledge while increasing their reading ability. Also, in this article, it talked about relationships between a teacher and a student are directly linked to literacy according to Moji 1996 data. Teachers who connect with their students foster students' ability to be successful learners. Students who feel that their teacher cares for them and has their best interest in mind usually have students that will grow and increase in their literacy skills. Um, I don't feel like this is anything new. I think maybe we're talking about it a little bit more, and maybe we're talking about it a little more because it needs to be talked about. Um, so that's another whole thing right there about those relationships between students and teachers. Um, and then there was also mentioned about fluency, and they took the approach of, in this article, they took the approach of a student's school and home environment are critical elements in student constructing engagement and being motivated toward reading. This article, Esferat and Lotus 2021. This is critical. When school or home environments do not promote reading, the ripple effect can take over reading efforts. Um, if um, if a child's home life does not support reading and does not support that practice in reading that so often, I know as an elementary school teacher, so often, yes, we do the best we can, but we do need some support at home with children that are new readers, and even children that are older readers. And I've noticed that probably where I work, which is a Title I school, I feel like this particular thing, it's not that our parents don't want our students to be readers. Many times, and to read at home, many times it is a time constraint of the parents because they're very much working parents. And there's lots of times when they work late and they don't have the opportunity to hear their fourth or fifth grader read. Their fourth or fifth grader will say they have read, which they have when they haven't read. So it's a little bit tricky. And I think that I think that it, I think that the use of um, digital opportunities to read about things would probably help this situation. That leads me into, using technology as a motivation tool. Um, and so, it's like, what technology? So this reminds me when I used to be a math specialist. Um, One of the things mentioned in this article is Carry-a-Tune software. And I know that when I was a math specialist, many of my lessons were based on songs. And so that created, um, an atmosphere of just the kids could learn how to count forward, the kids could learn about patterning, and it was just all through songs and getting them started, with any kind of activity seemed to be very successful. Social networking, uh, facing reality, social networking, social media sites are commonplace for most students who have a phone and can get their hands on a phone. The key is how can it be used productively. I like the idea for students being able um, to present digitally. I'm a little concerned about writing abilities possibly dropping. Um, a little bit more about YouTube. We used to say a picture was worth 1,000 words. Now with YouTube and TikTok videos, I would say they are worth 1,000,000 words. Um, Showing students a video about the Civil War instead of lecturing them will speed up their comprehension. I do agree with that. I agree that if we have the tools available, um, we can get our teaching across a little bit quicker using these tools. Microblogging, increased discussion and meaning in what is being learned. I think this article is from 2021. So they do mention a little bit about Chromebook technology. I know that we have been a one-on-one ratio since COVID. So our students use their Chromebooks every day. Some of the concerns have been that teachers haven't really had much training on the best applications and appropriate technology information, or text instruction to effectively engage students. Um, they were just given Chromebooks, and we just started using them with not a lot of professional learning for the teachers and how to use it appropriately. I think that's where the problem lies. It's underdeveloped professional learning for teachers and administration. Um, and I know that teachers, there are some teachers that use a lot of technology. Um, um, and there's also some concerns. There's not a very good balance um, with some teachers that use a lot of technology. We've seen less teaching, and then with teachers that don't use very much technologies, of course, that is affecting the motivation and the interest level of the students, especially if they come from a classroom that is high use of technology, and then maybe the next year a teacher that is less. You can definitely see that with the students. I work with struggling readers. One of the things they mentioned in this article was comics and graphic novels. Last semester, I worked with a struggling reader, and that seemed to really help him. He loved comics and was greatly motivated with the chance to read them. It was a little bit tricky because he is a struggling reader, and just because something is a comic doesn't mean the level of reading is not pretty high. And so that's something I was challenged with, finding things that he could have success in the story and understanding the comic. Um, let's see, teacher role, sharing a teacher that shares their own enthusiasm, giving positive feedback, and creating an enticing classroom. I think that multimedia uh, it gives students the freedom to use a wide variety of resources, which causes discourse and leads to students being able to support their own beliefs about a topic. I think that a student, um, I think our students are probably so far, like our fourth and fifth grade students are probably so far ahead of our teachers that they tend to catch on to different digital formats quicker than our teachers do. Um, I think that there's a little bit of concern about online monitoring. I know we did put a program in place this year to try to help with that, and kind of some limited, it, it sounds weird to say limited because you really don't want to limit if they are sharing about the content, but that's when they veer off the content that sometimes becomes a problem. And so things uh, that you have to, when you use digital literacy, you have to teach digital literacy and teach there are certain things you do use in content, and there are certain things that you do not use in ways that you talk to each other and you respect each other. I think my takeaway from this article is new literacies increase engagement, producing motivation, which um, can cause higher levels of academic and literacy achievement. So after reading this article from Esperat and Loftus, I think I read that correctly, um, maybe my mind's a little more positive about using more of the digital literacies. The next article I read was leveraging digital literacy for equity and social justice. This was Price Dennis and Caron, and written in, let's see, 2017. And so when I read this article, I came to realize that most of the current information about equity and social justice would be on a digital platform. Um, so there are books about historical events, but most current information would be found on digital literacies. Um, I like that. I like this the story, or Deidre and Selena talking about how they use these tools, Selena specifically in her classroom. And she set up the digital tools to promote engagement, support differentiation, create producers, and encourage inquiries while increasing technological strategies and skills. Um, I I'm familiar with quite a few of the um, the platforms that she talks about. The digital tools in the research increase students' motivation to learn more about social justice issues. The study helped the students gain knowledge, care about the world around them, and they were able to share information, thoughts, and opinions quicker with digital tools, increasing motivation for the topic. Um, Students can use digital tools to become critical thinkers and problem solvers. Teachers' recommendations include getting the community involved, using digital tools during knowledge and processing content, and not just for a final project. And I know where we stand now in my county and in my school is we do use some digital things as we teach lessons. Probably not to a great caliber. We'd use many of our tools, digital tools for presentations. And I think I love the way when the communication between student to student. And I do see this. I mean, I work with elementary, but I could definitely see this in a middle school or high school where they are doing a lot of their communication just like we do through discussion posts and blogs and different things to help, to be more motivating for them to participate. And I think their knowledge about certain issues would just increase exponentially. Um, let's see. Um, Foster problems posed and problem solving collaboration. Okay, creativity. I think that as teachers we have to make space for digital tools in our classroom. Um, it will. I think I definitely agree. It will increase the engagement of our students. Um, I think that those are the things that stood out to me in this article um, from Price Dennis and Caron, 2017. Um, this next article is Confronting the Digital Divide, Debunking Brave New World Discourse. Jennifer Roswell, Morell, and Averman. And this, are, I'm going to admit something here. When I read this article, um, I was a little bit perplexed. I wish I could have. I read the whole thing, but I wish I could have gotten a little more. Um, Let me say, emotionally moved, maybe. I think it's. Let's see. This was in 2017. Just a couple of comments. Um, let's see. So one of the things mentioned in the article was um, sometime it was that the part about people living in poverty do not have the same technology affordance as their more affluent peers and often do not have access to the ownership of those technologies themselves. Now, since this article was written in 2017, and even though I'm kind of going to share a little bit of personal information, so before COVID, our students did not at my county did not have one-on-one, Chromebooks. I and even during COVID, I had family members in Mississippi who they did not have any digital technologies besides what their parents had, which was phones. Some people had computers, not a lot of computers. I know that when since I do work in title and I was working in title then, when we did give the kids their Chromebooks, we soon and very quickly found out they did not have internet access. And so at the same time, we had to provide hotspots. And so we started providing hotspots for our students. Um, and still talking to relatives in Mississippi, I called and, like, curious, like, what are they doing at their schools? And a lot of it, they had worksheets. The parents would go once a week to the school and get a packet. And uh, to be honest, it was very sad because I do know that those students missed some very vital teaching in whatever grade they were in, and I'm sure they were still promoted um, because of the pandemic. Anyway, another thing I noticed was a little bit about academic literacies. Let's see. Types of literacy practices that students learn in school, such as working across different genres and informational writing and production that causes different domains. I know that teachers struggle to know how to have this balance. I've seen overuse and underuse of technology. I don't think I've seen a proper balance. It would be interesting to read research specifically for elementary students um, because I would think that um, with our elementary students, we would probably definitely want to have a very proper balance between digital and non-digital um, our academic literacies just to make sure we're not taking away some of those fundamental skills that they're going to need in middle school and high school. Um, the digital divide may also lead to lower levels in social advancement and poor academic achievement. I do agree with that. Students use cell phones or smartphones don't have enough opportunity. According to, let's see, Rubenstein and Avila and Satori 2016, the smartphone can only get a kid so far with academic literacy. Yes, I agree with that too. I think there was a little bit more. Yes, at the end of this article. Um, let's see. Um, One of the things I noticed is um, Beavis 2014 warned us about the use of the digital culture and that ICT do not translate easily and readily into the classroom. Comparing Carl's study, I just I really had a hard time getting into this article, but one thing that Carl's study talked about with the Indigenous Australians to parents with smartphones. Um, I guess it's almost like when we give a kid a new media tool and um, they are likely to use that tool and they're likely to use that tool in the proper way. I kind of think about this. It's like when our parents that were born in the 1940s and they were given a smartphone and they tend to use it a certain way. Um, and so when I think, and yes, this article is international and it talked about international, um, um, the international digital divide. It also talked about a little bit, it seemed like about the national digital divide. And I think it's almost like internationally, if you give a tool that students have not had, they almost seem to use it better than students who have these tools all the time, especially when it comes to citizenship. Um, can the great digital divide be closed internationally? I think that's going to be, I don't think it can. I think that would be, it would be amazing, but I just don't think that the support is out there to do that. Can it be closed nationally? I think it could. Um, but it will be probably determined by state government at this point, not districts or teachers. I think there was something in the article, if I remember correctly, that referred back to it being the teacher's responsibility. And yes, there are things, don't get me wrong, that are teacher's responsibility. But it's almost like when I looked up Project Read and found out it wasn't a resource that I could use in my district. So, there are limits, and there's always going to be limits. Should schools provide a means for all students to increase digital citizenship and knowledge? Of course. But where is the money coming from? And the training for teachers, which that's a big one right there. I don't think the digital divide will close in my lifetime, but I'm unsure if I want it to happen. The problems associated with smartphones has caused a literal lockdown on their use at schools. So, how many of our students have to lock up their smartphones during the school day now? Um, so I don't know. I think with this article about the digital divide, I had very much mixed feelings about what. Not that I disagreed, but the real possibilities. Anyway, and then the last article I read, which I'm glad that I read this last because um, I really liked it. Confronting biases with children's literature, a perspective teacher's journey to develop a critical lens for reading the word and the world by Kelly Lapinack and Gold. This one was written in, let's see, I have to find that on another page, 2020. So I just want to go over a few things in this article um, that it was just a wealth of information. It just felt so close um, to personal with my teaching experience. It is necessary for teacher educators to prepare future teachers for working with students who have different linguistic, ethnic, racial, religious, and socioeconomical backgrounds and, and identities identities than their own. I agree. Teachers must determine who they are and how they feel. I've seen some teachers come and go who could not adjust to teaching only African American or Hispanic children. That's what I teach. Um, if one if one is a white female teacher, she must come to realize that white privilege is real and how to deal with it and meet all the needs of her students, um, regardless of their ethnic, religious, or social economic background. Another thing that resonated with me is critical readers move beyond a passive acceptance of the text or the notion of reading between the lines to become active, take an active stance of reading between the lines and beyond the lines. Um, Critical readers unpack the text, the world, and their own biases. Teachers must teach beyond the literal meaning of a text. They must teach their students how to question the author's perspective and the message. Teachers should work with students to unpack a text. Um, I, I, the suggestions in this article were incredible. Evelyn's journey as a reflective teacher, I mean, reflective journey as a pre service teacher was excellent. I loved her ideas of bringing text back into the lessons. I do know that sometimes, I guess after reading the other articles, I was like, okay, can there be too much digital? I think there can be. I think that her ideas for I love how when she used the sandwich shop and then her preconceived how she thought the um, the lesson was going to go, but then the kids when they started talking to each other, the lesson kind of went a different way than she expected. Each student's background and experience influenced the way they made meaning from the text and the world around them. I think it was smart for her to shift her role and become a learner with them. Uh, in the second lesson, and I believe she used the wall in the middle of the book. Excellent books, excellent books. Um, and she taught a little bit about um, teaching her kids about the limited perspective that they might have, and about that may lead you to make some assumptions. In the third lesson, let's see, she used the bad seed. Also, um, help students. I thought it was excellent to empower students to unpack their own biases as well as the teacher. And what I love about her journey is she really, hopefully this will stick with her. She really learned at a young beginning teacher that those biases that uh, we naturally carry as teachers and how we were raised and the things that we know and we do um, can come across in our teaching. And to be aware of that is just a huge thing for a new teacher to be aware of. And also the planning for that not every kid is going to be raised just the same way as we were, and we need to empower like those kids um, to question what is the author saying and what did the author have any biases. Um, it says examine each title with a critical lens to determine which ideas, values, or groups are centered or marginalized. Very important. When we teach students to move beyond passive acceptance of the word and the world, they learn that there is more to the story that has often been overlooked um, because of bias. Um, if we are engaging students in critical literacy practices, we must first do this work ourselves as educators. Um, with critical lens, students learn to question the text and the world as they consider the role and power and privilege. Um, I must admit, when I read this article, it was kind of like a redeeming factor for me after reading the article about the digital divide. I feel like I feel like the way the learning that happened in this article about with this teacher and the way um, she went through this journey with her students is almost like when I think about the digital divide, I think about that would also be one of those kind of things. I think that yes, we do have some 23-year-old, they got that digital down pat, um, and they use it in their classroom. Usually overuse. I'll be honest about it. But I feel like if we approach the digital divide and we use the digital tools and use digital literacy in the way that, um, let's see, Kate Kelly, is she the one that was the student? It was, in the way that Evelyn uh, Gold approached biases. I do feel like that we can find that balance that we're looking at as it relates to, I mean, all the different things, the thinking critically through a critical lens, the digital divide, and what we're going to do to make sure all our kids are, I guess the right word is computer literate. Also, the article about equity and social justice, teaching kids to take um, and teachers, kids and teachers, to step into someone else's shoes for a little while, see what their life is like, and then the motivation behind digital literacies. These are all, every one of these articles had something to do with something that should motivate teachers, to motivate us to do a better job um, with our students and with teaching them about technologies as well as the world around them. Thank you very much.